This is a recording made by Jim Walkinshaw of A.J. Pete Mitchell at his home on Higgins Lake, box number 212, route number 2, Roscommon, Michigan, 48653. Pete's phone number is area code 517-821-6334. Pete resides in the winter in Florida at 509 South Shore Drive, Osprey, Florida 33559. The phone in Florida is area code 813-966-4584. This recording was made on August 29th, 1988. Pete's wife, Elizabeth, was also in attendance and will be heard on occasion making comments.
Collected.
Right, here we go. All right, Pete, maybe if you could just take a few minutes and kind of cover where you started and what functions you worked in during the time at Oldsmobile.
I'll start with seniority date was 10/8/34. My first job at Oldsmobile was two-room apprentice, and at that time, Brian Athey was the superintendent to them. And whether that name rings any bells or not. Well, anyway, he was superintendent. Rube Shipman, who later worked for me.
Okay.
Rube was my foreman, and I started out working with the machine floor inspector, who we checked all the work from the machinery that was turned in by the various machinists, and routed the jobs. So everything went by J order in those days. They all went. A lot of them went through the heat treat. Some went through the heat treat, went partially finished, and anything carburized and hardened. If they had any soft spots on it.
That was all in Building 40 at that?
That was all Building 40. So we routed the workarounds of the various machine floors, the heat treatment, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there on, I got scheduled through the various machining activities and lathes and mills, and not a planer. I didn't get work on a planer or boring mill, but grinders and everything but those. So.
Did you start there, Pete, right out of school?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And I started at 10/8/34 right out of school. In school? As a matter of fact, I was still going to school.
Oh, were you?
Okay. And I did graduate.
Okay.
But my senior year, I did my work at home and turned it into the school, and I was able to graduate at the same time I was working at Oldsmobile. So I worked at that until, well, let's see, it'd be the early war years. Boss came along one day and said, they'd like to talk to you over in Product Engineering up on the 3rd floor in the auditorium tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I guess it was. I want to talk to you about, I want to interview you for the possibilities of a job as a process man. I know what a process man was. I said, well, okay. I had another fellow that was, Dick McCabe, the name you wouldn't recognize, I'm sure. He worked in the two-room with me. He was also wanted to go to the interview, and Bill Bottom was a benchman. I knew Bill Bottom, so I went down to Bill and I said, what's a process man? So he explained it to me. And I said, is that a good job? And he said, oh, yes. He said, you get that, that'd be fine. So real briefly, then, all three of us went over there, and all three of us, Johnny Coleman interviewed us. Okay. He was the guy. He interviewed the three of us, and I don't know how many others he'd interviewed, but at any rate, the three of us got the jobs. And what the jobs were, they had set up a miniature, I'm going to say processing, manufacturing, forward planning deal to manufacture a 75 millimeter gun at Oldsmobile. So this was somewhere around what, 41, I guess, somewhere in that period.
Right as the war started,
Yeah, well, it was just before it started.
actually before it started.
Before it started. And there's some names you may or may not be familiar with. They give you the lineup of the people who are in charge.
Right.
There was Phil Monahan, Don Burnham,
All right,
and John Coleman. Now, John Coleman was under these other two guys.
okay.
Some people got to call the other two people quiz kids.
But Burnham was he a manufacturing manager?
No.
What was he?
He was just there on the 75 millimeter
Okay,
project.
at that point in time.
First I'd ever heard
All
of
right.
him. Of course, he might have been around long before that, and I wouldn't have known because
Yeah.
I was buried in the tool room.
Yeah,
But there the two of them were, and John Coleman was underneath them. And John Coleman had a man named Roy Moore, who was like a general supervisor, who had 3 supervisors working on this job. Dave King, who was an old-time Oldsmobile employee, Roy Caswell, and Jim Hargraves. I don't know where Jim came from or Caswell, but they were all at Oldsmobile, but where they gathered them from, I don't know. But they're split into, Dave King had the breech block for the gun. Hargraves had the tubes, and Caswell had the breech ring, and these were all pretty good sized parts. And so then, of course, there was an assembly made of those parts, because this was really a Canon 75.
yeah.
So once you assembled the tube and the ring and the block, that was about as far as we went. It's paid, shipped, that was it. Well, I worked through that thing through most of the war.
What did you do?
Well, I was assistant, so-called, to Dave King. Dave King was a chief process man on the block. He was the process man. He had a lot of authority in those days on that job. As the, like a foreman would be, a supervisor.
Were you buying machinery or tooling or?
We're processing the whole thing from scratch.
Okay.
Starting from scratch, and it required some visits to the Watervliet Arsenal. In addition to that, they'd hired a special engineering service out of Detroit who were going to make the so-called picture sheets, and who were going to do a lot of designing of fixtures, tooling, and gauges, and et cetera, for the project. And these all had to be planned and metered out and brought back and looked at and approved and sent back and get made and all that sort of stuff.
Were there any government people working in that area with you or
We
not?
didn't have it. I don't recall a government man with us at the time. Bill Blackwell was up there on tools. He was Oldsmobile, of course.
Spectre, so
Trying to remember though. John something from Costa Park. Niehaus. John Niehaus. They gathered a nucleus of like a small Oldsmobile operating group.
A cross section right through the organization.
Yeah. And they brought them all in. They set up offices in that auditorium on the 3rd floor there to do this. So if you wanted to talk about buying some tools or something, Bill Blackwell was there. Or fixtures or machinery. And they had a purchasing agent for machinery there too. His name escapes me at the moment, but I think I'll come up with it. Lou Schroeder. Lou Schroeder was killed on his way to Detroit on one of these milk tanker trucks cut loose. Went across the highway and his car went underneath it. He didn't make it. Anyway, he was there. So, as I say, it was a pretty good sized group just to zero in on this project. So, one of the things came in, well, of course, my main job was to get acquainted with what Dave was doing, because I was really an understudy from way below.
Yes.
And I was there mostly because I knew something about tooling, etc., and I could be of help in getting this thing under motion. Well, the tough part of the whole damn thing was that Dave and his cohorts like him are salaried people. And in those days, salaried people did not get any overtime pay.
Mm.
And we were working at least 6 days a week. And we'd leave there at 5 and be back at 7 and work till 9. So they worked ungodly hours. And I was a nobody from the tool room. And I was getting my tool room hourly rate, including overtime. And I was making much, much more money than Dave was. I will give Dave credit. He didn't enjoy that, but he didn't hold it against me like one of the other guys did. One of the other guys, he hated the guy that was in my position, worked with him. He took it out on him. And and Dave mentioned to me once, I said, Dave, I said, I'm sorry, but I said, I've got anything to do with it. You told me, come up here, and this is it.
Yeah, you were there.
So he said, I know. Well, later on, they did come by, come around, and they gave him some back pay for that, and they increased their wages. Well, anyway, that's what we did through a good share of the war years with a 75mm gun.
Where did that get installed on the plant?
Oh, building 38.
38.
Yeah,
Okay.
building 38 was pretty well occupied with that. We had lots and lots of machinery in there. It was you didn't check those things out like you did cylinder blocks.
I appreciate
few
those.
pieces
Slower,
per hour,
yeah.
much slower. And then they had the assembly floor for that.
Where was it assembled?
I'm trying to remember where it was. Somewhere west of Building 40. I think it was in the building that used to be the old engineering building.
Like 34, maybe?
Right next door.
34.
West.
Yeah.
I think that's where it was, but I'm not positive anymore. Well, anyway, then along came through that period, not that I worked on it, but Oldsmobile was making they went into a 37mm gun.
Okay.
That was made upstairs in 38.
All right.
And I didn't have anything to do with it.
Was that done in the same manner, however, another group of people working on
yes.
that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then they got into the 90mm shells.
Okay.
That was bad news. That was a toughie. And I just got a little in on the tail end of that thing. And they were changing superintendents. It seemed like every 2 months you get another superintendent over there.
Is that because they were having troubles?
They have all kinds of problems trying to get the things made and get them up to volume, make them right, and ship them out.
Was that mostly a machining task?
Well, they were forged first.
Oh, yeah.
They were forged at the forge plant. And we got some what we call banana-shaped forgings, which didn't help things. And there was some great big lathes that they had big slides that were opposed, came in on an angle like this with multi-tools. And here's this part that would be running out around, and here are these big slides coming, and they're supposed to be fixed, turn.
Okay.
But with the part out around, the slides were going like this. So we had lots of problems. And it was a good day when that thing ended. I think everybody at Oldsmobile, I think, sighed, gave a big sigh of relief to get rid of that thing. Well, then after that tonight, I worked on the axle plant processing.
This is after the war now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not yet. You
Okay.
don't get that first. So I worked on that for quite a while.
That was out in 21 then?
Yeah.
Where that was all done?
Yeah. See, toward the end of the war years, they could see this thing winding down. And the lead time that was required to retool and make automobiles was considerable, as you can appreciate. So again, they broke off a chunk of people and said, well, let's get started on automotive. And we had machinery that had been scattered somewhat around the country through other General Motors plants where they needed something for, like a brooch. One of the axle shaft brooches was out in Janesville.
Oh, yeah.
I wound up going out there to look at it, see whether it was bringing back or not. But so we were working to get the plant reset. to build automobiles as far as machining was concerned. I'm
Mhm.
sure throughout Oldsmobile, there
Sure.
were other people in
Sure.
other departments doing the same thing. And I worked on that for quite a few years.
Was your office then, Pete, did you move back to building 40 for
Yeah, I
that?
was in building 40.
Okay. When you were in
Second
40,
floor.
was the opening there?
The opening was there, and the Netley girls were there. And when I was working down in the tour room, that was all wide open. When the Netley girls would walk around
By the guardrail?
by the guardrails, somebody was foolish enough one day to whistle, and they got told quick about that. Everybody looked up when the girls went by.
Uh-huh.
But it's also interesting to note in those days that the tool design group, they normally didn't have enough work to keep them busy all year long. So what it amounted to was that the tool designer would design tools, fixtures, and small pieces of equipment. The big pieces were all bought, but a lot of fixtures and some small piece of equipment were designed in the tool design group, and they would then be built in the tool room. And quite often, the guy that designed the tool was worked in the tool room and built it,
Uh-huh.
which is some people used to say that's poetic justice.
Yeah, sure. He learned what
He learned a lot.
You bet.
But Don Ronald was one of those people that they designed first, and then things would go slack, and they go down the tool room and work, and then,
Oh, yeah.
then it was time to go back and design again.
Good
So
way.
that's the way things worked in those days. That's when they had long layoff periods too, for
Yeah.
change and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I didn't mention it yet, but when I first started Oldsmobile, John Dykstra was there as works manager.
Okay, he was the works manager.
He was works manager,
Okay.
and S.C. Skinner,
Mm-hmm.
I remember
He was the general manager.
he was a general manager. He was a tough guy. He ran that thing like a submarine. I guess he was a submarine commander in World
Mhm.
War II. And
Did you ever see him out in the plant much?
yes, he had a pet trick. He used to have the superintendent scared to death. Bob Woolhouse was the plant photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Bob?
Sure.
Well, every once in a while, Skinner would call Bob Woolhouse at home, say, "Meet me at the Pine Street gate at 9 o'clock this morning," or whatever time he picked. Bob would be there, and he said, "Bring your camera." So they'd meet.
Mm-hmm.
Skinner go to some one plant. It might be a motor plant, it might be an axle plant, it might be a paint plant or an assembly line. But whatever it was, he went in there at that time, not to watch anybody work, because nobody was working. He went in there to see what he could find that he could rub these people's noses in.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he found something that he didn't like the looks of, bad housekeeping, he was a bear on housekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, I'll take a picture of that." So we'll also take a picture. And of course, the poor superintendent didn't know anything that was going on. But when he came to work Monday morning,
Mm-hmm.
he came to his desk, and on his desk would be a big envelope like this, big glossies, and he'd open it up, and here would be the pictures of all the messes that Skinner had seen, and he'd write a note on there, "Clean this up," or words to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys used to hate dreaded opening their office doors on Monday morning, but that's one of the way he operated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, where were we? Dykstra was still there, and he and Skinner, I don't think, got along too well. And it wound up with Dykstra leaving Oldsmobile, and he went with Danley Press Company. I think
Okay.
they're in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is hearsay, so you may
Oh,
get some corrections
I know,
here
yeah.
and there, but this is as I recall it. And I don't know how long he was with Danley, not too long. It might have been a year, it might have been 2 years at the most. And Ford came along and offered him a job. So he went down to Ford, and they offered him a good job to start with, but eventually he became president of Ford,
Yes.
as you well know.
Yeah.
And there were there were a few times when he had the opportunity to laugh at some hierarchy of Jan, which I'm sure he really enjoyed. Well, anyway, then getting away from that, getting that Dykstra out, and after Dykstra left, I think that's when Tom Downey and Bob Rallis came in.
Oh, okay.
They came in right after the war. I know
All right.
that. Downey was at Janesville. I met Downey.
Rollis was at Janesville,
They
was he
both
not
were.
too? Yeah.
They both were. Rallis worked for Downey, and so did Bob Russell.
Mhm. Oh, Bob Russell was there?
Oh yeah.
No, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they're all good buddies
Mhm.
at that time. And I say good buddies. I can't say that about Downey, but Rallis
Yeah.
and Russell were.
Mhm.
So they came to work at Oldsmobile, and Downey was works manager. They still called it works manager in those days. Of course, he stayed on quite a while, as you know.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, when we get involved, and we got involved in the Sapphire jet engine job, which had to be the early 50s.
Right, because we built that plant in 51, I think it was. Yeah.
It was the early 50s. Well, Frank Hager, Sr.,
Mhm.
he was my boss. I'd been out. Well, I'd had a job. I'd been transferred out to I was night superintendent of the Axle plant.
Okay, this was after your processing,
Yeah.
actual processing experience?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Then I had the opportunity to move out there as a night superintendent, which I did. Ray Carter, Joe French left to go somewhere. He was superintendent. He left to go somewhere. Ray Carter moved up to superintendent.
Okay,
They needed a night superintendent. So I wound up being that, so
All
to
right.
speak. And then I wasn't out there too long, and
By the time we moved to the west side of town, then they.
yeah, and I got
transferred me
called
back.
called back into production engineering
okay.
to work under Frank Hager.
And Frank was the department head at that
Yeah,
time?
he was like master mechanic
Okay,
at that
Okay.
time, and I worked with him and under him on that project. And then when
no, that was on the jet engine program.
yes,
Okay, what were you doing there?
well, what was I doing
Yeah,
personally?
Yeah,
I had all the process people
okay.
were working for me, and I was reporting to Frank.
So you folks
But
had to.
Jim Edwards, the name you may or not
Yeah.
remember, Jim
Old
Edwards,
Jim Edwards, yeah.
yeah, he was some. You probably know how these things work better than I do, but my impression of it was that I was there working with Frank, but Jim Edwards was down in like his layout. But he still it went. I started out working directly for Frank, and then sooner or later, they introduced Edwards between the two of us,
Oh,
and yet it didn't have anything to do with it. And all I could figure out was when this thing really goes into production, they'll move Edwards right in and push me out. It's what I figured was going to happen. So I don't know what the deal was supposed to be.
interesting.
Before it happened, Edwards left Oldsmobile. Then they brought Bob Russell down.
Mhm. Where had Bob been prior to that?
He was down in Methods.
Okay, he was in the Methods organization.
He was, of course, she still had that close tie of Downey, Rallis, Russell.
Yeah,
Seemed to me there might have been somebody else, but I'm not sure. Anyway, we processed all the rotating parts
Okay.
and made the assembly of the complete compressor assembly and a complete turbine assembly.
Now,
Turbine.
Pete, did we have a pilot line somewhere?
Yeah, we had a pilot line in building 34.
34?
is the first building west of 40. Right?
Yes,
That's 34.
okay.
We set up a pilot line over there. And I don't know, I don't think we built a complete good engine there, but we've made a lot of parts there.
Okay,
And then by the time we got that going, there was enough stuff that was being set up out in the other plant So we were able to move in there and build parts and make our first assembly in the new
Okay.
building, the new facilities. And one of the highlights of the whole darn thing was that Curtis Wright, they were the people who had the license to build this particular thing, because the Sapphire Jet was an English design. And we didn't copy their process by any means at all. And in particular, their way of assembling
Mhm.
engine components. And we had been given a deadline of building 3 engines by such and such a time. So these 3 engines worth of these parts to be assembled. And as it turns out, we did do it. Remember, I called my supervisors in one day. We're out in the new plant. I told them, I said, look, we got this deadline. We got to build 3 engines, and I told them what the date was. And they said, no way, can't do that. You're going to do it. And they started giving me all the reasons in God's world why we couldn't. And I said, you guys are giving me a lot of reasons why you can't do this. I just say a couple things to you, and then they're going to tell you, get the hell out of here and come back and tell me how you're going to do it. So I said, you've forgotten there's such things as temporary fixture. He said, we can't do it because we haven't got the fixture for this, we haven't got the fixture for that. I said, make it temporary. Well, we got to have a lot of hardening ground stuff. I said, do you ever hear of cyaniding?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, they could do that. Well, needless to say, we did make those 3 engines. And when they heard about it down at Curtis Wright, when the vendors came and told us one day, he said, we told them down at Curtis Wright that you guys made 3 engines. He said, they wouldn't believe me.
Couldn't be done.
Hadn't made any yet.
Uh-huh.
Well, anyway, when in the about 54 or somewhere, 54, 55, somewhere in there, that we were through building that engine. And I came back over to building 40. And Johnny Coleman was just about to retire. This picture you
yes.
saw there. And by the grace of God or whatever else, I wound up taking over when he left.
Okay.
So I was the
Pete, who were the supervisors you had working for you at the time you were working on jet engine?
on the jet engine, John Hall, and I was trying to remember whether Ray Burns was a supervisor or whether he just worked for John. I think maybe he was. I'm not positive. I think it was John and Ray.
Okay.
Ray Burns,
Okay.
John Hall. And that was about it. We had a flock of engineers. We had our own design group out there. So
Okay.
we were a pretty close-knit group.
Yeah.
And we had a small tool division out there.
You went to plant 3 to accomplish that, or
Oh,
did
yeah.
you stay in building 40?
No.
You went down to plant
Went
3.
right out to 3 and stayed there.
Okay.
I was out there. That was quite a refreshing change in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
You get away from the main plant.
Right.
Most of the time you do your own thing, and then every once in a while somebody will give you a whack that
Right.
reminds you that you still work
Right.
for the other company.
When we were doing jet engines there, was there any automotive work going on there at all?
No.
Was all
One end, the other. That thing is, you start the south end of the plant, and we were making Nimonic 90 buckets and the blades for the compressors, and moving on down compressor discs, turbine discs, and then assemblies of discs, turbines, until finally, and also the big compressor shaft. Oh, it's big aluminum.
Yeah.
I guess it probably was a fortune. It's been a long time. They had a lot of machining inside now, but all these diameters of blade assemblies went on.
Yeah.
And then eventually they were all married together, and then we had a spin test pit. I did take a whole compressor assembly and hang it from about a 5/8 inch rod down into this pit, spin it with a turbine,
Uh-huh.
and I've forgotten how, like 25,000 RPM or something like that in a vacuum. That's the only way you
Oh,
can get it
yeah,
up.
because it would paddle too much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't do it otherwise. And every once in a while, one of those things would just shovel it
Explode.
out with
Uh-huh.
a shovel, scoop shovel. They had,
Where was all that done? Up in the north part?
it was all in the north end.
Uh-huh.
That's where it was. No, there was no,
There didn't have any plating plant or nothing?
I know, came late.
All right.
Came, little Herbie Holmes, he came out there. Of course, he was dealing with equipment, you know,
Right.
and they're getting rid of this stuff to the Air Corps. Well, there was a tall Air Corps guy, an old timer. I don't know what his name was, the immaterial, but he came out there this one day, and Herbie was standing there looking up at this guy, and this fellow was being a little bit of an obstructionist. And Herbie wasn't getting too far from him, so finally he made some real pointed remarks to this guy looking up at him. And this guy looks down at Herbie and says, "You can't stand there and intimidate me." I'll never forget that.
This Herbie was smaller than I was.
Well, this guy was a good 6 feet.
Yeah.
He's telling Herbie he couldn't intimidate him. Well, if there's something that you hadn't checked out, he'd say, "Well, I think you better go and check that. And then come back on me, Bill." He'd come back and say, "I checked that and it's fine." He said, "Okay, I think it's going to work. Go ahead." That's the way he'd handle it. He was not one of these guys that would rub a guy's nose and say, "No, that's no damn good. You can't do that."
He'd let you learn.
You see, this Herbie Holmes that worked for Gilbert Burrow, Herbie'd bring in a tracing. It might be for a cylinder head. And he'd lay it out the front of Gilbert like this, a big sheet drawing like that. Gilbert would take one look at it. "God damn it, Herbie, you can't do that."
Mhm.
Well, Herbie couldn't do that, and Gilbert knew he couldn't do that. Because Herbie said, "Well, what's wrong with it, Gilbert?" He'd say, "You gotta change all the equipment in the cylinder department if you do that." Because Gilbert Burrow had more know-how in regards to the process and its effect on the design effect on the process. And he knew it cost a lot of money. And he knew that if certain things were moved, it's going to be awful expensive.
Mhm.
And that's why he'd tell her, "You can't do that." But he didn't do it quite the right way.
Did you have a lot of dealing with Gilbert Burrow?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I dealt with Gilbert Burrow for a good many years. And I don't want to sound like a braggart, but our department, not me, but our department saved Oldsmobile untold millions of dollars by having a cooperative effort between processing or manufacturing engineering and product engineering, which in a lot of companies, they're like this.
Mhm.
One looks down their nose at the other.
Yeah.
And we could always get together with Gilbert. If he's going to come up with a change on a part, he'd call up and say, "Hey, you got some time? Come on over, take a look at this."
Mhm.
And we'd take a look at it and say, "Have you got to move that one from there to there?" "Oh, why do you ask?" "Well, if you don't move that one, you can save about $100,000. That sort of thing. And he knew this. So we worked that, and that worked all the way through Gilbert. Bob Stemple, when I first met Bob, he was a chassis engineer, and Ray Burns was my supervisor out in Plant 3, the axle parts. And we were getting into the front wheel drive, the first one, Tornado. Getting into that, and the front spindle, all that stuff was pretty involved, and the rear axle was something different than we'd ever done before. So I met him through Ray Burns and talking over design stuff. And then the next thing I knew, he was engine engineer, because product engineer, they just moved those guys.
People.
Bang.
Yes.
So I got to know Bob Stemple real well. And I can't remember ever calling him and asking him if he had time for us to come over and get together, talk over something, or take a look at something that we knew was coming up. He was the most cooperative guy you ever saw in your life. And he really appreciated it. And
Did that relationship between product and manufacturing change as time went by, or?
that's why well, there was some deterioration after Stemple. There's one guy that was in there for a while that he was more standoffish, like
The ivory tower approach.
who are these guys? Who do they think they are? I don't know his name. It's just as well. They I was quite proud of the fact that well, I say quite proud. I was quite happy. And I knew when Stemple was leaving. I knew the day he was leaving, and I was going to call him up and wish him good luck because he was going to go to Pontiac as chief engineer, I think. And I thought, oh my God, he'll be too busy. I don't want to bother. So I didn't. Within about a half an hour that morning, secretary of the phone rang. She says, Mr. Stemple's on the phone. I picked it up. He says, hi, Bob. He said, I just wanted to talk to you, Pete. He says, and tell you thank you. He says, for your cooperation.
Isn't that interesting?
And I said, well, hey, thanks a lot. I said, I want to wish you the best of luck and so forth. But he was that thoughtful.
Sure.
To call me. I was busy as he had to be on that last day, and thank me for what help we did been able to give it. That's one of the high points as far as my memories are concerned.
That's great.
The thing you had that was a lot of help, you had a lot of good secretaries.
Oh, you better believe it.
Oh yeah, I might comment on some of those. I think secretaries run the plant personally, but that's just my opinion.
I had excellent secretaries. I don't think I ever had a bad one. Most cases, everybody says some are going to be better than others, but in general, I couldn't fault anyone. They were all outstanding people. They did real good job for me. And it makes a tremendous difference, as you well know. If you got one that knows you and knows what you're doing and knows their job, that's really great.
And knows the terminology and everything that goes with it.
I was tickled to see Janet. Used to be Janet Carl at the
Hendy.
party.
Yeah. She and Tom Hendy.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get her to sit down with us and do this.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
I haven't quite got over the hump with that yet.
You haven't agreed to it, Janet.
No, she's a little. I mean, she says, "What do I have to share?" And I say, "Janet, you have a lot to share. You just sit down with us and ramble." I'm sure she will eventually.
Yeah, she was just the nicest person. I did tell her the other part of it, so I never did get to thank you. I said, for all the help you gave me. And I meant it.
Yeah.
She's outstanding person.
See, Pete, we went through a variety of new engines over the years.
Well,
And we started with the rocket, and then moved on and improved and changed and lightweights and all those things that happened. Any trials and tribulations with those kinds of things that you can remember that were kind of unique or different?
probably the most confusing period was through this emissions program, when they went into this catalytic converter stuff, changed a lot of components of the engine, and we did a lot of engineering and estimating on various types and designs of engine change. And basically, they were the same engine, but modified considerably. But we looked at making converters and a good many other things. Until one of the last couple of years that I was there, I'm glad I left before it happened. But the last couple of years there, we were in and out of the last big study was on turbine engines, diesel engines, and gasoline engines, which is the way to go. They were searching for which way to go. I'll give Butler, if you haven't already talked, give you the whole story. And he sent me a copy of the manual that came out of all that, where they made the decision to go diesel. But all I'm saying is that we did a tremendous amount of engineering, and getting into the turbine was this was like getting into foreign country, because you're into all kinds of things that were radically different. You get into turbines. So that probably was the most unique, other than getting into the jet engine job, the war jobs of the guns.
Did you ever get down in the little firing range
I
that they
just couldn't
had?
imagine, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the darndest thing. I suppose if they had such a thing today, you'd have to get something signed by the president of the company to walk down there to observe that, because they'd say for safety reasons you can't go there.
Yeah.
But you went down the stairs to this thing. It was all underground, and they cut loose. They had 20s and 37 millimeters. 20? I don't think they had 20s. They had 37.
Okay.
Boy, oh boy! And when they cut loose those things, you didn't hear anything. It's just like somebody took their fingers and pushed them halfway into your head like that.
People would
Just
go down there
pressure.
with no ear protection at all, just.
Nothing.
Yeah.
The only other place that even come anywhere near it used to be over at sheet metal. You went out the back door of building 40 and went straight across.
Yeah.
Went in the big door there and
Yeah.
turned just slightly to the right.
Right.
There was a,
Big press there.
oh no, was way before the big
Oh.
presses there. They had a bunch of sheet metal hammers
Oh,
that
okay.
were like this,
Yeah.
on the guy.
Where they would hand form fenders
form.
or whatever they were making.
Yeah. And that again was the kind of deal that you didn't hear the noise, you felt the pressure in your ears. And I had a brother working over there, who eventually lost his hearing. I'm sure that's why.
Archie
But-
there.
Well, yeah. But when you'd walk in there and you want to talk to him, I'd go over and I'd stand near him and I'd shout. He said, "Don't shout, just talk normal. I'll be able to hear you."
Huh.
And he could.
Isn't that interesting?
But
Well, he couldn't hear anything when he went home.
he was almost,
Pete, in that firing pit, how many guns did they fire at a time? Do you remember?
it was terribly large. I doubt if they ever cut this part. Time. Might have. See, this wasn't a high production job.
Sure.
There might have been 2 at a time or something.
Well, what was the target?
Well, it wasn't the fact that it was a target. It was,
What were they shooting into?
they were shooting into like a sand bank at the far end. There was a sand bank.
Oh, yeah.
All these shots with it.
Uh-huh. This was all underground.
It's all underground. Solid walls, sides. Obviously, the solid walls behind all this. I'll call it sand. I don't think it was gravel. It shouldn't have been. If it was, it should have been sand.
Where was this?
What's right? Well, somewhere a building was 38. No, the next one east was 36.
36. Yeah.
Probably out in front of 36 underground.
I've seen it on plant maps. That's at least its location.
See that.
Because I know you things like that other places.
Yeah, well, it's the other thing that was impressive, to say the least, was trying to think where we saw it. But, somewhere we saw a jet engine on a stand being test fired, and you were standing. Well, you're looking right in it, where you could look right at the tail cone on the forward. There was glass. I don't know how thick it was that you were looking through. But boy, when you saw all those flames coming out, they're almost white hot. Your first reaction was to take a step backward. I can't remember where we saw it. It was some one of the plants we went to. It wasn't ours.
Yeah.
Probably was Kurt's right, because that's about the only place. We went up to Canada to an AV roll plant that made jet engines in Canada. We went up there and looked around. It could have been up there too. But other than that, it had to be Kurt's right.
See, during the war, were we responsible for Janesville and other places also? Are you aware of anything like that?
Well, General Motors was.
No, I mean Oldsmobile.
I don't think Oldsmobile had anything to do. I think they're separate entities, just like Pontiac made the Oerlikon and aircraft guns.
Yeah.
There was no tie-in except but they all work for the DOD, I suppose, Detroit Defense Division. But it was military work, but no. The reason that the jet engine job was, like I say, Curtis Wright, they had the permission of whatever the technical term for it would be from England to build the Sapphire jet in the United States. And that in turn made Buick was the prime contractor, and Oldsmobile was a subcontractor to Buick, because we made the rotating parts and the rotating part assemblies, but they made the big casings and the body and everything else that it went into, and they had to come up with a way of testing it.
Okay.
So our parts went to Buick, but I don't know how many situations there might have been with a corporation like that.
Yeah.
But normally, each division stood on its own feet, I think.
The little hammers you mentioned down in 56, that,
Yeah.
what were, you know what they were making?
Well, they were on fenders. I made a lot of the tools, tool room, when I worked there before. Well, while I was there, they're making, like, some of those were like beating hammers that went around the edge of the fenders and curled it under.
Oh, yes.
And
So they were production tools.
oh, definitely. They're a mechanical hammer that just,
Yeah,
I don't know how many times a minute that thing wrapped that fender, but it was
just a rat-a-tat.
it really went. And then, of course, when you get people in there with hammers and dollies banging away on fenders, it gets a little noisy too.
Yeah.
They had all that else. But that's going way back to the 30s.
Yeah.
And that was existence. It's quite a while.
See, when you came to work, was the engine plant where it is today, so to speak?
Basically, yeah. It made the V8, and now once I get back, straight 8 and straight 6. 8 and 6. And between the engine plant and 38, I used to play softball at noon.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. We had a lot of room in between
Yeah.
those days. If you could hit a ball from the east end there, get by about second baseman, and go toward, let's say, building 38, and be about it. But there's plenty of room. You don't have to worry about breaking a window. No way at all.
Where'd everybody park?
Parked right inside the plant. In those days, I didn't have a car.
Oh,
I bummed a ride with Bill Martin, Willard Martin. He parked right behind building 40. There was an old building that ran 90 degrees to the tail end of building 40 across
Okay.
the back end.
yeah,
I don't remember what that old building was for. I think it was only a one-story building,
yeah,
and we used to park alongside of that thing,
okay.
and just hourly workers
Yeah.
drive in through the
So the
gate.
plant was all open,
Work.
basically? You
Yeah.
could wander in and out? Did you need badges or those kinds of
Oh,
things,
yeah,
or?
yeah, the badges.
I was at the gate,
There was somebody at the
Yeah, they
gate?
had watchmen.
because
Yeah.
you had that sore throat.
Went to first aid.
Went to first aid.
Yeah. She was in the car with me. I just went over the night and drove in, parked right outside first aid, which is sheet metal. She sat in the car and waited. I went in, talked to the doc, came back out. But things are a lot different now than they used to be.
See, up in the actual plant, Pete, what kinds of things were going on up there from a manufacturing standpoint? What were we making when you were up there processing and night superintending?
Well, they had the bumper plant.
Okay,
There's bumpers. There was a wheel room where they made the coated
the
wheels.
buffing wheels?
Yeah, the buffing wheels.
Mhm.
And then there was the axle plant, which included some press operations, of course.
We were making housings then, stamping
Oh,
housings?
yeah. Stamped housings, welded, unmachined.
Mhm.
bearing retainers were welded on. That was all part of that process.
Were we making differentials?
No,
We were not doing any gear work.
no gear work here.
Okay.
Won't say I hadn't dreamed of it then. One time later on, while I was still processing the axle plant, Johnny Coleman took me to Pontiac with him one day. And he was not my immediate boss.
Mm-hmm.
I probably was working with Catke. And he took me to Pontiac. And on the way, he says, well, we're going over to Pontiac, he says, to look at their gear manufacturing. He said, to see whether or not it's something that we could get into. He said, maybe we make our own. He said, we don't want them to know that. He said, so what I'll do, he said, I know the master mechanic over here, so I know him real well. He said, no. He'll assign somebody to go out. He said, I tell him we want to go out in the shop, just take a look, see what this stuff looks like. He said, whoever he sends out there, he says, I'll walk ahead with him. He said, keep him occupied. You trail along behind, he says, and you take a look at the operations. He said, so, excuse me, when we get through, he said, want to get an idea of how much money it takes to set up a plant like this.
Okay.
I did.
Yeah, right.
Nope. So that's what we did. We went over there and he shot the bull with his counterpart for a while, and out the shop, he and I went with this guide. He strolled on. Coleman, he was slow, long steps. He's a short guy, but he took long strides. He got this guy down the aisle about 150 feet from me, and I got my little notebook out, and I'm going like this, and 15 of those, 25 of those, 16 of those. And where I couldn't count, I just must be 12 of those, 25 or whatever. Looked everything all over. Get all through. And he never, Coleman never explained to me anything. I didn't know that some pieces of equipment were, you didn't buy, they were like on lease. I had no idea about that because I'd never been involved. When we got all done, keep in mind this is back a long time ago too. And on our way home, he said, well, he said, what do you think? How much you think it cost to set that thing up, to build it here? In the meantime, I'd gone through all my number of machines, and I'd take a particular type of machine and say that'll cost X number of thousands for that times 25 is this much money and this
And this was
that.
before this.
All by hand. And get down the bottom line, $10 million. I know it up in the ballpark. He said, well, how much do you think that's going to cost? I said, no. I said, I'd guess 10 million. I don't remember what his answer was. I'd like to say, I think that's what I think it'll be too, but I'm not sure he said that. It might have been wishful thinking on my part. I'll never forget that trip. But some guy said, take a look at it and figure out how much it costs. With that much machinery, when you get into differentials, you're talking one hell of a lot of machinery.
Were they making our differentials for us at that time?
Yeah, the guys at Oldsmobile always used to say they kept the good ones for Pontiac, shipped the bad ones to Olds.
Maybe some truth to that.
I don't know. I can't
I doubt
believe
it, but
I can't believe it because our in those days we didn't have reliability, we had inspection.
yeah.
But I can't believe that inspection would let them get away with that because we were making axle housings for Pontiac and we were making them for Oldsmobile. And they were like peas in a pod.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, the inspector come down and say to the superintendent, you got to send somebody over to Pontiac. And they got X number of, they were stacked up on skids. They're crossed like cord. They got so many skids of these things that aren't to print. You got to send somebody over there to do something. Or got to send somebody over there to unruffle their feathers and get those things back, take care of them. One of the things that used to happen, there was one drilled and tapped hole in the axle housing. We called it a breather hole. There's a little bronze block went into that thing. There was a line in it, and it had a little hole in it for atmospheric pressure, I suppose. Well, it was probably about a 3/8 inch tapped hole. And every once in a while on this particular machine that did that, if the operator wasn't watching, if the drill came down and the drill got dull and they broke a drill, the tap would come down. And the tap, of course, couldn't drill into tap a hole, so break the tap. If the guy wasn't aware of what's going on, the next thing you know, there was no sign of a hole because nothing ever touched the housing anymore. So they got real smart and they gave the inspector, they gave him a piece of just plain white chalk. They said, "We're tired of having all these things come back at us, Pontiac, with no breather holes in them. So when you're inspecting these, we want you to draw a line through each one of these, chalk line through each one of these holes." Worked for a while. Then all of a sudden, send the guy over to Pontiac because they got a bunch of breather holes over there that were missing. And the guy, he'd just drawn the line. There was no hole there. He just drawn the line. He was so used to drawing lines, he
just automatic.
Didn't pay any attention to it. I had a lot of funny experiences. Some of the strikes they had were interesting too, and all the supervision in the shop. They out in the axle plant, the welding booths became poker booths. That's nothing for the guys to do. You couldn't do any work, couldn't do anything.
Set your office up. Sniper plant.
Yeah, during the big strike right after the war.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, they set us up out at, I was working for Bill Petching in those days. I remember that real well. And they wouldn't let us in the plant. So, George Redburn was in layout then or not. I think he was George. They made arrangements with Howard Silver. They had a basement area that they put a lot of the manufacturing engineering people into. And we sat down there. They brought in a bunch of wooden picnic benches. And we sat there, wooden picnic benches with a notebook or something. Oh, it was horrible, but you had nothing. We were unprepared. We didn't have stuff with us. And it was just somebody's idea was that we should be there and be ready to do something. And yet nobody knew what the heck we could really accomplish.
Didn't have anybody sneaking in and out of the plant, so to speak, with prints or that sort of thing.
Couldn't do no access. Later on, we learned to get stuff out so that we'd have it out prior to the strike just in case. Then if you had to set up operations, you could continue processing, ordering, do your engineering or forward planning. Those things could progress. But that first time, that didn't happen that way, not in my experience. It was terrible. You looked for any excuse you could to get out of there, to go to somebody's plant to look at something, even though you weren't going to go to a plant, you just got out of there. Oh, it's just huge. I guess Skinner he was out there too. He'd go through there every once in a while. It was a pain, a real pain. And then we went through a lot of dry runs after that. Old Bill Petzinger on that particular one. Later on, I don't know if that was a strike he did on or not, but he was no young man by the time he did this, whenever it was. This through a period when they wouldn't let the salaried people in. And he had the pickets out there north of Building 40 between engineering and the old coal office there. Remember, the pickets were marching around in circles. He came walking out there, wanted to go in, and pickets wouldn't let anybody through him. He stood there a while. Pretty soon old Bill Petching come along. He stood there and he watched for a few minutes. Next thing I knew, he just took off, walked right out in the circle. He walked right around a half circle and right hit the gate.
Followed the circle.
The rest of us guys said, "My God, if he can do it, we can do it." So we all started doing the same thing. So a bunch of us got in. It kind of broke the ice a bit. But I always give him credit for being a gutsy guy. He did it.
Did we generally have what you would consider good or poor labor relations in those times, or? What was your thought on those?
Hmm.
I know in the later years you were dealing sort of directly with what I call the union folks.
Yeah. I think Oldsmobile throughout, as far as Oldsmobile labor relations are concerned, as back in those days, I don't know what it's like today, but back in, from the time I started there until I left, I still think that Oldsmobile had one of the best working associations with labor in the corporation. I really do.
What do you attribute that to?
Oh, I think a lot of it, to begin with, I'd go right back to Bill Mahoney. Bill Mahoney probably knew more damn people than any other guy at Oldsmobile ever did or ever will since. Bill Mahoney couldn't go through the shop, but he just knew so many people. And Bill Mahoney's attitude, which I've heard him speak of many times, was that he didn't care whether the man was hourly or salaried. He was a human being. And he deserved just as much consideration whether he was a floor sweeper or whether he's a superintendent. It didn't make any difference to him. In other words, fair is fair. He didn't say it that way, but that's what was the gist of it.
He was always, just, he knew you wherever you run into him, and he always, just as nice as.
He's liable to give you some lip too, sound off at you. Just that was his way, but it was all in fun.
Sure.
Nothing was serious about it. But he always used to call old Chalaman out there in the axle plant, who was he was the foreman of the Raxel assembly line. Whenever you see old Chalaman, he always called him the Pope. Here comes the Pope, he'd say. And Chalaman, he took it. He didn't mind. But I really honestly believe that a lot of it had to come from Mahoney. And I think that the people that worked with Mahoney, that there was a lot of them came down the line, and probably a lot of that rubbed off on them from Bill. It'd be real interesting if and when you get to talking to Matt Campbell. Don't tell him what I said.
Oh, no, I never do.
Just see what
Yeah.
Matt had to say. It'd be interesting to cross-check them. But my own belief is that had a lot to do with
He
it.
was such a nice.
Thank you. Cutler was always pleasant, but he is far different, different personality entirely. Mahoney. Mahoney and Wolfram, I don't think got along too well together. I could gather, but that's incidental. I could tell you something about that, but I won't.
Sure that you are.
No, I don't think those kind of.
Tape 2 of A.J. Pete Mitchell. Did you meet Kettering? Had you met Kettering?
No, I've heard him talk. I've heard him talk on the closed circuit TV to the corporation. Well, we were riding along in the automobile one day, and some fellow was talking on the radio, and it was very, very interesting. He was saying things about the diesel locomotive, and he said, we were trying to do this and that. He said, but the diesel locomotive didn't want that. He said, we finally got down to the point of figuring what the diesel locomotive wanted, not what we wanted, what the locomotive wanted. And he said, then we started making progress. Then later on, another time, he was talking about the dedication of the new tech center. I was on closed circuit TV. And the comment that he made at that time that I always retained was, I think it's fairly accurate, was, we're so busy looking backward to where we've been, we're backing into the future.
That's interesting.
One of his statements. But that old guy, he had so much logic. It was real interesting.
When did you retire?
I got this.
Was it April 1st, 1975? Okay.
Officially, he was done long you know,
Yeah, vacation.
vacation.
All that good
Yeah.
stuff. It's been a few years, then, hasn't it?
Well, I'll tell you, the time goes by so fast, it's scary.
Have you lived here since then? Is that?
Just about,
uh,
we spend our summers here, winters in Florida.
Well, we built this in 1955.
Oh, yeah.
We really had a lot of land.
Been quite a while. Up to the last few years, we've been building and building and building.
Uh-huh.
The back wing, we built that on
Oh,
ourselves.
yeah.
Did everything on that except, concrete and civil. There's the footings and slab floor.
Mhm.
I did all the rough plumbing. And,
Even digging with a shovel to put the
oh,
footings
good
in.
Lord.
The Ben, so-
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, I had some help.
but I don't want to, in fact, I could carry any more shingles. He'd sit up on the roof and I'd carry, and I could only carry a third of a bundle.
Oh, yeah.
She carried the shingles up, I nailed them on.
When we built our house,
You
we did the same sort of thing.
And it's cooperative effort.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What?
Well, take a minute with me, Pete, and, these pictures came to us in the mail from Andy Butler.
Heck, yeah.
No, I don't think so.
That's
Is
not
it?
it.
I don't know who Emmy is.
I don't either. Well, I'm gonna assume that,
Oh,
so,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. 1044 Andrews Lansing.
that was it, but
Okay, is that Ed Butler? Yeah,
the red or, oh, I tell you who it is. It's Marty, his son that went to school with our son.
that's who I think it is. I think there's a note in here that says, I remember reading it. Get it open. This is from Mary Ellen Butler.
Oh, that's
Okay,
who
it's
it
his
is.
wife.
Yes. These were among Edwin Butler's things.
Yeah, that's his wife.
From his wife. So I don't know the occasions,
No, we don't.
nor do I know who these individuals are, and maybe you will or won't. Read their names down
Those two gals are,
there.
Like we go back to our high school pictures
I don't think they go back that far.
because that,
all those two women.
But I'm gonna run into some in there that are of you shortly.
Got a lot of the same.
Whatever that occasion was, yes, I don't know what the occasion was.
It's his mother.
we're speaking of his dad too.
This guy's a salesman.
Is he?
That's Ben. He's a salesman.
That looks like,
Moore,
Ray Moore.
Ray Moore. Yeah, this is, Freddie Besaw is a salesman there. It's Ray Moore.
So, Fred,
Besaw.
what was that?
He's a salesman. Will that work or you
Yeah,
want
I got
another?
it. Fred,
Besaw. It's dead.
Besaw.
Yeah, Wesson Company.
Okay, Wesson,
WSSON.
okay, and Ray Moore is on the parcel.
Yeah. Oh, damn, this guy worked for him. He's from Wesson
Also for Wesson.
Ben. Been a long time. I can't think of his last name at the moment. I don't know who that guy is. He looks like my cousin, but he would be. That's that same damn Ben. Okay.
Your truck was
Oh, Chris.
I don't know what that is, but it's a real photograph of somebody's lake.
It's Fred Besaw.
see, Ed was doing this stuff back in high
Just saw
school.
one guy here
Yeah, now you're gonna get into the bunch that you should recognize, because I think this is somebody's retirement party. See, there's Jerry Cook and John Bond and
Art Mingus,
Art Mingus. See,
Bill Yates.
and this is
They look like
Carter,
that's Ray Carter.
Ray Carter back in the back.
This guy, I think he's a salesman.
Okay.
But you know all these other
Yep.
guys. You know Bill Yates.
Yep.
Okay.
Recognize that.
Leonard Shear.
I'm just gonna slip these back in the back.
Okay.
I'll pull those off there. Okay.
Leonard Shear.
There's Ralph McNabb, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Is that Ralph in his young days?
That look right.
Okay.
There's a little indistinct.
Yeah.
That might be Mingus back there. I can't see the others too clearly to know who they are.
What the name is like?
That might help. Well, that big one probably wouldn't work too good. You know. One of the names I was fishing for a while ago was Lyman Matt. So
Oh, yeah. Is that,
That's him.
that's him standing up,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
That-
Minus a dare.
In the front. Okay. Let's see, what,
Bruce Barrow.
Bruce Burrows, okay.
This is Edgerton. Was a tool designer.
Or left, all right.
And he was getting engineering out in the differential.
Let's see, this is
Steve Stankus.
Steve Stankus, okay.
John Cosgrove.
All right.
This guy was a designer also, but
I can't remember
tell you his
name
name.
either.
Can't tell you his name. Other stuff like that. There's Bill Blackwell.
Yep,
Uh,
Ray Federal.
Levi Reeves.
And I think that must be John Howe, the back of John Howe's hat.
Looks like it. It's Ed Sawyer. Joe Schmeichel.
Yeah, that's probably Joe Schmeichel, because that's Herbie Holmes. That's little Herbie.
God, yeah, then when they
Uh-huh.
Don Runnell.
And this is Don Schofield in back of him.
You know Don Runnell.
I did not know him.
That's
So,
who he is. You
okay.
got it marked.
Well, I'll get it off the tape. That's okay. We'll just keep them in order and come off all right.
You think so?
Well, yeah.
I better not drop the
All right. You don't want to do that.
Ray Carter. Rex Carter.
Rex Carter, yeah.
Carter. I don't know him. This was a Bob Smith.
Okay.
He died of a heart problem.
All right.
Was an engineer. He was a tool engineer. Bruce Barrows.
Standing up. Yeah.
Ted, that looks like Ken Knight back there, but it don't make sense. I
I don't think it is.
don't know why it should be. Let's minus the dare again.
In the front, okay.
This guy don't.
Yeah, threesome. Do you know those three people?
Yep. Cleo Hibbs.
Yeah.
I don't know her.
Okay. Or the tall guy?
I was thinking, I don't think that's not Lyman Mack. Maybe.
I don't think it is, no.
Maybe if it is, even a lot younger.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
These are sales.
Okay.
You know, LG Ives.
Okay.
He is Ernie Dooley was sales.
Okay.
Sold
I
grills.
can't remember his name either.
And I remember seeing him, but I don't know anything. No, Ray Byrne.
Ray Burns in the middle, yeah.
This guy worked for Industrial Metal.
IMCO?
Yeah,
Okay.
he was their design
Yeah, on the left.
engineer. He was the engineer. This guy, something. Simons.
The guy on the
John
right.
Simons.
So who did he work for? Or is
He worked for us.
He worked for us,
He was
okay.
tool
All
engineer.
right.
By the time he was working for Ray, obviously.
Mhm.
That's John Simons.
All right, on the right.
Okay, this is Ed Judge.
Right.
Info. This guy sold tools.
This is Keith Sanders.
Keith Sanders from Time
Time
Study.
Study. Yep.
Ed Sawyer.
Bill Blackwell. Here's
Lyman Mack.
Lyman
That's
Mack standing
Lyman
up
Mack.
again.
Uh,
That was Ray Moore, I think, right there on the left. Again, maybe.
That's Reeves.
Oh, is that Reeves? Okay.
This was our clerk.
I can't remember his name.
West, was it George West?
Could be.
He was designer, and this is Cecil Thompson.
Okay.
Cecil Thompson was
He
tool
was-
maintenance
he was on the-
supervisor.
Okay.
Tool maintenance supervisor.
Okay.
Stan Wysocki.
Yep.
These guys, I think, are both sales,
All right.
outside sales.
This guy's familiar, but I can't
Yeah, he was a tool designer. I can't tell
place
you
his
his
name
name.
either.
Oh, and this guy was hell of a nice guy from the engine plant reliability.
Yeah,
Or
those three guys, I'm not good on dates on those three.
I know him. He had a heart problem.
Mm.
He died from it. So, I used to stop and see him and talk with him. He was one of the nicest people.
Okay. I'll eventually find somebody that can identify.
He was Scotch or English. She was nice and there, Bruce Barrow.
And the gal,
Uh,
she got in the picture, anyhow.
maybe they brought her with them. This was the superintendent, excellent fun.
Yeah, this
Shepherd,
was
that
the-
Shepherd? Bill Arnold.
Bill Arnold on the left. Okay.
This guy was,
On the right is,
he was a tool division foreman on engine.
okay.
He retired early. I can't remember his name. But Shepherd, you remember him?
No, I don't.
He was an engine plant superintendent
Okay.
or assistant superintendent.
There's your guy.
That's Getzel. I'm a Mac, Bill Yates.
Bill Yates. This is Ed Gerke, I remember
Yeah,
that.
Harold Wright.
Oh, that's Harold Wright, okay. This guy is familiar, but I don't-
Virgil Bishop, I think, when he was
Right.
younger. I'm not
Okay.
positive, but I think that's the only one that rings a bell with me, and it'd be Virgil Bishop. I could be wrong. He's in sales. Sales. He owned his own machine tool company. He was president of Place Machine Tool Company.
okay.
Uh,
This guy was in Machine Tool Records.
yeah,
Now, what was his name?
trying to think about it.
Dang. Disgusting, isn't it?
This guy was in tool maintenance. Or, no, that's tool room foreman.
Oh, well.
He had something there. Can't come up with it.
Speaking of Schmeichel,
No,
that's not Schmeichel.
No,
That's
Joe,
Joe Schmeichel.
no, I can't.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh, but the next guy will know some of the.
Yep, next guy will know somebody else. This is
Chauncey Kaiser.
Chauncey Kaiser, the single. Okay,
Yep.
but we'll catch that too. Now, most of these guys I recognize.
Drexel Rollins. Yeah, total.
And I don't know who that is. Is that Chauncey Kaiser? Is that possible?
There's Bob Russell.
Who's retirement? That must be a retirement party. It's gotta be. Maybe Chauncey Kaiser retiring?
Could have been.
Because that was the guy who was just a
But
single.
it doesn't make sense if Rollins would be there, though.
It doesn't.
No.
Okay.
Rollins, Drexel.
There's
Maybe
John
they
Powell,
would, because
see?
here's Chauncey.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's the same person. See, he's sitting
Okay.
right next to Rollins.
Okay, that's Chauncey Kaiser then. That's John, Drexel, Rollins, Chauncey, Russell,
Mhm. And
Getzel.
Getzel.
Wasn't, John's retirement, right?
No, because he's sitting on the other end and he's up speaking. So I don't think it is.
Bob Russell, Kaiser and Getzel. What's this guy, Mickey something from the tool division? It was, and then he left there, and I think he went to IMCO. It was this Jack Jilene from IMCO, and this
Okay,
is
the
Don
middle.
Runnell.
Okay, on the left. Okay.
That's Fred Bisa, it's
Okay.
Western Company. Levi Reeves,
Oh, is it?
yeah,
Okay.
that's Levi again.
Again, with, somebody way in the
I think
back.
this is when Levi left Oldsmobile and went with, what was it? Euclid, wasn't it? Euclid Division, was that what it was? General Motors wrote first moving equipment, wasn't that Euclid?
Could
That's.
be. I know he went with another GM division,
Yeah, that's what it was.
and later he was in Detroit area, wasn't he?
Jonathan Leonard, I think.
There's trucks, so that's back at the Chauncey Kaiser thing again. their shoe and trucks and all that.
Yeah. I don't believe a word of it.
Yeah, right, because it's awful. isn't it?
They're all just saying that's dull.
Are you making the speech?
Yeah, he's making a speech.
I don't know what I was talking about.
How good a job he had done over those 50 years. What else do you talk about at retirement parties?
Well, if it was Levi Reeves, he wasn't there 50 years.
It's the
You
same
can do it,
day.
you-
It's the same bunch. You don't suppose Randy Getzel and those two guys were going at the same time, were they?
I don't think so. The only ones I remember going at the same time were Walter Knowles and Brian Easy. But I don't have a good memory. It was Ray Moore
John Howe
and John. This looks like Blackwell perhaps back there.
gets a little fuzzy in the back.
Tell the story about the woodpecker in the bar. It was Bill Blackwell.
What's the woodpecker in the bar thing?
Bill Blackwell. I go to a party. After a few drinks, he'd go along and say, "You ever hear about the woodpecker that went into the bar and said, 'Where's the bartender?'" Bill was sort of the bar. Standard, it's a woodpecker in the bar. But he just kept that up.
The whole evening.
Oh, gee.
Freddie Gellhart.
Oh, yeah, boy, is he young. And John Howe and that.
Ray Moore.
Ray Moore.
Yeah. This guy was in the Tool Division. I can't think of his name.
And Spadero again.
Oh, again. What did Ray wind up doing?
Ray ended up,
On sheet metal last I saw in the paper.
well, when he retired, let's see, he was, let's see, how was that? He worked directly for materials management. I think he had all of the,
Material control stuff.
well, no, it was the materials handling and all of that stuff out in the plant and the shipping and,
That's not
Traffic.
what Jeff was put in.
I think traffic guys even worked for him.
Oh,
He was up on the 6th level with, right next to Knight, remember?
Yeah, but he got moved out of there into sheet metal, I think it was, or maybe it wasn't. He got moved out into the plant before he retired.
Guess I don't know where he went after that.
There's Ray Moore and Levi Reeves. I don't know what other
The guy that I
John Simons, Steve
Steve
Stankus.
Stanka, yeah.
Steve Stankus. This guy, he's a presenter, but I can't think of his name. I don't know if it's Sawyer or not. I can't tell by the
Who was that?
Bill Yates.
Bill Yates, yeah.
John Bond, Art Mingus, Ray Carter, Steve Stankus, somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. It's really fine.
What's his name?
Not too much you can tell by that.
No, that's kind of a dark. Where's your sound?
Yeah.
John.
John. Bill Blackwell. John
John
Bond.
Bond again. Art Mingus is on it next to him. Maybe this guy.
Yeah, that's Mingus. Carter. That might be if I was there, but I would bet on it. Not enough showing there. No.
That's done.
Well, Bill.
Schofield,
Holmes.
Herbie Holmes and Joe
Joe
Schmeichel.
Schmeichel, yeah. Bill Arnold.
John and
Lyman Man. Ready B, so wasn't it?
okay, so we're back to those guys.
Yeah.
This is large.
No. Cosgrove. This is Ready B, so.
And that's Leonard.
That is Sear. I don't know who that is.
That's, you sure? That's Norrell.
No, not right. No. It's just Ben something. He worked with Pete.
Pete
Something was funny.
Sawyer and
Anyway,
Blackwell and Sawyer. Oh, there's Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave
Dave
Wardy.
Wardy, Harry Reid, and Gary Van Arsdale.
Yeah.
Bob Ross.
Chauncey. Must be that was Chauncey's return.
Three distinguished looking guys, all of which I know, fortunately.
Two of those kind of outranked the other. The other one was pretty ranked. Gray Moore. This guy worked for Nashville, by the way.
Leonard and
Johnny Roberts.
who was Johnny Roberts?
Johnny Roberts was an engineer on the piston job when he retired.
Hmm.
I always called him Sassy.
Who's the guy on the left?
That's his spin. I don't think.
Oh, okay.
He's
Yeah.
a salesman.
He's the guy we saw with the sports shirt on, really.
Yeah. There's Herb Holmes, you don't know.
That's the other Herb Holmes, yeah. And then, what's this here?
Fred
Oh, that's
McCall.
Fred McCall, okay.
Yeah. Walt Campbell,
Mm-hmm.
Frank Hilliard,
Junior.
Bob
Yeah. Right.
Bob Smith, and
Jim Doyle,
Jim Doyle.
yeah, and Johnny Bond.
John Bond. John Bond's retired. I saw
Yep.
him at the
Yeah,
party.
he was there.
Well, I was glad to see how well he looked, and
Leonard Sear and, Bob Russell.
Yeah. Bob Markowitz, Freddie Gallagher.
And let's see, Dwayne Severance, maybe?
Yeah, he's dead and gone.
Yes.
Matter of fact, he committed suicide.
Mhm. Yes, he did. Russell and,
Pfizer, and I know his name, I'll get it right. But it's a tool,
Midgley, yeah.
tool maintenance tool maintenance supervisor. See him quite often. She looks like I'm a
Yeah, your bartender.
serving.
Yes, it does. That's what I thought when I saw that. Well, let's see, this is that Fred Gilmore, maybe?
Like Brad and Ray
Ray
Moore,
Moore and
Land and Jerry Cook.
Jerry Cook, yeah. Okay, got all those guys, okay. Same bunch, I think. You're still serving.
Yeah. At least didn't catch me drinking while I
Right.
was serving. It's this guy we've seen before, and he's, like he's a salesman.
Is that Pedro in the middle?
That's Ray Pedro.
Yeah,
Ray Moore. Oh, it's all rare.
a lot of shadows there.
That's Levi. Ray Moore.
And
AJ.
AJ. Yeah, sure.
That AJ.
Oh, I've been drinking too
A little
much.
bloated.
Well, that's a good bunch. That'll help a lot.
I've got a few for you
Yeah.
that you didn't know.
Yeah.
no,
Well,
There's still some more pictures around there because I know we got one of Welcome on the
on board. Uh-huh.
and it's
I've got a picture back at that place. That's, Wolfram standing on the mountain boards with, seems like there's three other guys there with him.
wearing a big felt hat like he looks like a Chicago gangster.
No, he does not have a hat on. So that's a different picture.
When I had he had a big somebody did. I think it's a big felt hat on. Well,
Okay.
if we come across them,
Yeah.
I'll give you a yell.
I will, see.